Welcome to a game of two halves, and today we're joined in the studio by two very special guests in our relegation battle. Joined by Joe, the Nottingham Forest fan, and Cam, the Leeds fan, and once again joined by Ellis as always. And today we're going to discuss the next four games in the most hotly contested relegation battle in history, in Premier League history. And we've got to start with Cam. We've got to go in league table order with Leeds sat in 17th. And Cam, how are you feeling about
the
Leeds?
Heights of 17th. I'm buzzing about that. Well, Javi Gracia, I wasn't feeling a lot. I was feeling like the players weren't really bothered. I don't know if they weren't really bothered or they just didn't believe in themselves. There was a lack of self-belief. There wasn't a lot of... You couldn't see what Gracia was saying translating into the game. Whereas with Bielsa, it was clear as day. And even with Marsh as well, probably for half his time, you could see what he was trying to do. Play direct football, narrow football through the middle. But with Gracia, it was like I literally wouldn't even be able to tell you now what he's trying to do. But with Big Sam, everyone knows who Big Sam is. Like I refuse to call him by his actual name, by the way, because that's sacrilege. But everyone knows what he's trying to do, playing like he's 1945. But if he gets his points, he gets his points.
I mean, it's quite an interesting topic, isn't it, Big Sam? And I know Ellis and me have quite a strong opinion about Big Sam. And
yeah,
after
wrong.
After his time at Everton, but if you were to say now in these last four games, would Big Sam keep you up or would he send you down?
I still think we're going down, but I think that it will be a lot more competitive than it would have been under Gracia. The only thing I regret is that we didn't bring him in earlier. I think when it comes to... the statistics prove that late on manager appointments don't really do anything. Normally it's one league position either way, but in a relegation battle that obviously means something. I still don't think we'll stay up just because of the difficulty of the fixtures. We've got the most difficult fixtures out of, obviously, us three and Leicester. I'm not really hopeful about that at all. I feel like if we'd had 10 games, we would have had a lot easier games as well. Like the Bournemouth game with Allardyce, I think we still would have won or we would have got a point off of that. Bournemouth played brilliantly and we got battered. But, I feel like it's too little too late. The only thing I'm happy about is Victor Orta's gone, so we don't have to worry about paying £1 million for a minute or whatever it was for John Kevin Augustine.
So why did you want Victor Orta to leave?
Because he's terrible, mate. He's just... The only good thing he ever brought to the club was Marcelo Bielsa, and he's ridden for the last 4 years off of that wave of congratulations, when really, if you look at the story... Rajic Sani already knew who he was from looking into the French league and the Italian league. He already knew what kind of man Bielsa was. But going forward, it's just been terrible signing after terrible signing. The only good ones that I would be able to highlight are Nonto, which was a last-minute panic purchase because we couldn't get Bamba Dieng, or Cody Gakpo, which was never going to happen to begin with. And all the rest of them that I will call good signings were all signings because of Jesse Marsh. There's no chance that Victor Orta has also coincidentally managed to say we're going to sign 5 Red Bull, Leipzig and Salzburg players, weirdly just after Jesse Marsh joined. It's all Marsh signings that he's demanded. It's just been stinker after stinker. Dan James for 25 million when he's championship level, and even people at Fulham think he's rubbish.
Didn't stop him scoring at Goodison though, did it?
Yeah, that was brilliant. I love that. I love Dan James. He's a good kid, but he's not... He hasn't got the level of finesse and poise to play at the level. A lot of the young'uns that they've let go for some weird reason. I know not officially let go, but you've got the players at Millwall and you've got Sam Greenwood and Joe Gallart at Sunderland, which are players that I would start right now over some of them in the starting 11.
It's interesting you bring in these players like Joe Gallart, because he was instrumental in keeping you up last season with some of those goals, and it's almost quite representative of Forest's situation as well, with Brennan Johnson, Morgan Gibbs-White. You've got some class players there in that squad. I think that's why we bring in Everton, and it kind of differs for our situation because we've not really got these players that are absolute world beaters. We've got a squad that probably deserves to be where it is, rather than having 2 or 3 world beaters and then players that you will probably likely see in the Championship, which is like what you've got with Nottingham Forest with Brennan Johnson. So I just want to bring it to you, Joe. What do you think of Leeds' situation, and do you think Allardyce can actually keep them up?
Well, I think the advantage you've got is you've been here before. Obviously Everton have, but we haven't been here before in terms of relegation fight in the Premier League. So, and obviously Allardyce has been here before as well. Obviously he's done it with so many clubs. Obviously not with West Brom, but I think I don't think him coming in at least in my opinion, I don't think that's going to affect your chances. I think you're still going down.
Yeah, I think I would agree that whatever was going to happen 12 games ago, let's say we kept Gracia and looking forward, the difference isn't going to be massive, but there is the manager bounce we have to think about, and maybe it is better to have a bounce when you've got tougher games coming up ahead, because the logic is that you could have kept the worst manager, won the easy games, and then so a new manager bounce against, no offence, Forest, Bournemouth and Palace, they're not great teams to have bounces against. But
wouldn't you rather beat the teams around you than beat the better teams? And wouldn't you worry that if it's Allardyce's first game against Manchester City, could you kind of not get that bounce?
This is nowhere near Sam Allardyce's first game against Manchester City, because we talk about the team. Allardyce has been to Main Road, the Etihad, so many times in his life. He doesn't care that it's Man City. He's not intimidated. Whereas I think Gracia, on a certain level, and Jesse Marsh to 100%, they were scared to go to these big places. You see, that's why Marsh ended up getting so many yellow cards and getting told off, because he thought that in order to compensate for being scared, he had to go out and give it the lash. But Allardyce knows exactly what he's doing, especially in regards to PR. I mean, there's this whole thing about him saying that he's better than Pep, Klopp and Arteta. Based on experience, he's probably got more experience in the Premier League than all three of them put together, and he's more experienced in the English game than all three of them put together. But I think what he said, he knows it's not true. He knows that all three of them are better managers than him, but he knows that the media buzz that's going to create is taking the pressure off. I mean, just look at the amount of stuff Elan Mellier's been getting recently.
Yeah,
you know, all these players. Brendan Arrington gets stuff every week. Bamford, Rodrigo, they are getting hounded by Twitter all the time. So when Big Sam's come in, he's thought, I'm going to take some of the pressure off them and I'm going to make it about me. Because if I'm making it, this is a young squad. If I'm making it about me, they've got the lack of eyes to be able to prepare themselves for games like this.
I feel like with Big Sam as well, it's the vein of arrogance that you need to go to these big six clubs and try and get a result.
Yeah,
because
he's beat Man City with Bolton.
Yeah.
And for him, I think it's a historical thing. If he was with Bolton from, was it 98, 2007? He remembers when City were this big, when they were tiny. When I think they were just coming out of the Championship at that point in time. He remembers when they were tiny. So for him, he's not coming as a newcomer, a relative newcomer to the Premier League. Gracia managed Watford, so he's not a newcomer, but Marsh would be. He's not faced with these massive egos, these figures of the game like Pep and Klopp would be. He's walking in like, I was managing teams when these two were playing in the under-11s. It doesn't mean anything to him. So I feel like the style of football he's going to play is going to be shameless. It's going to be, down and dirty, 10 behind the ball. But he doesn't feel the need to live up to, an expectation or a rule, because he's proven it time and time again that he can keep teams up.
Is that not arrogance, though?
Oh, it's totally arrogance, yeah. But there's nothing wrong with arrogance as long as you win games. And, arrogance in football is what makes people who they are. I mean, Pep Guardiola might be one of the most arrogant people I've ever seen speak, but he wins games. I mean, look at it, Mourinho, Klopp. Arteta, not as much. Maybe that's why he's bottled the league. But arrogance is a massively important thing, not just in football, but in life in general. You have to have a bit of arrogance to get what you need.
And I think as well with this arrogance, it can win you games, but it could also massively backfire.
Yeah, there's a difference between arrogance and hubris. Sometimes you can go into some games massively overzealous and end up messing it up. Like, I think that's what happened with Gracia. He won 3 out of the first 5. And then he's gone in gung-ho and lost. He got battered by Bournemouth. That never would have happened. That is an example of hubris in football. But I don't think Allardyce has the capacity for that because of his experience. Hubris is normally that's for someone who's that's for the Ben Whites of the world. Let's call it that. People who have won like a little cup, and all of a sudden they think they're the best player in the world, and they feel like they can tell the media that they don't watch football. Allardyce is not that kind of man. He knows exactly what he's capable of and where he wants to do it. I still think we're going down, but maybe we'll have a pint after the game and it'll be a bit more entertaining.
I've got my doubts about Allardyce, to be honest. I think
I don't blame you.
Well, so he did take West Brom down, like you mentioned, and I think the thing for me is I don't think the personnel's good enough for the way he wants to play. For me, the thing that you're going to get out of Sam Allardyce is he'll try and solidify that defence. But I think that defence is probably the worst in the league for personnel. So for me, I'm thinking, does Allardyce slightly improve that defence, yet they still leak goals, and actually blunt the attack in the process. Because if you are playing that style that doesn't give those really good attacking players the freedom, are you almost shackling them? And for me, then I think that would lead to you eventually going down.
But see, this is the thing. With Bielsa, we had good attack, good defense, or medium defense. With Marsh, we had good attack, terrible defense. And then we go to Gracia, where it's terrible attack, terrible defense. We're talking about blunting the sword. The sword is already blunt, really. I mean, if you look at the last couple of games, we were meant to be playing, it was like low, wide football, and it was terrible. So I'm not scared that he's going to make the attack any worse. I feel like he'll make it better, really, especially considering these players, everyone grows up, even at a youth level, everyone grows up. The style of football that Allardyce plays is the style of football you play when you're 13. You go up through the youth team. You're not playing tiki-taka at 8 years old. You're playing 4-4-2 long ball, Brexit ball. So it's not going to be like trying to teach a new system to these players. It's going to be, this is coming back to what you're used to. And I think we are the worst defence in the league. I mean, that's undeniable. But I think Forest is maybe around there as well. I think your goal difference is slightly worse than us, but then that's only because you don't score.
I think that's quite bad as well.
Yeah,
I think.
Just in regards to that, I feel like they're under Gracia and under Mars, they were being asked to play a very weird style of football. So I'm not going to come in here and pretend like we're going to play massively. I still think the defence is going to be terrible, is what I'm saying. But we do have a lot of midfield players there who do like to get in and get stuck in. So I think they would be perfect as like low line, basically forward playing defenders. Like I think Weston McKennie would do a shift. I think I mean, if he's able to play, I think Tyler Adams would do a great shift as like almost a faux centre back. I still think we're going to leak goals, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as bad as we think it is.
So if we now look ahead to your next 4 games, you have City away, Newcastle at home, West Ham away, Spurs at home. 4 arguably very difficult games, especially in the context of your defence and how you're leaking goals and how you're not really scoring goals in the absence of Patrick Bamford's goals up there. So if I was to say to you now, how many points are you going to get and will you stay in the division? What would you say?
I think it's going to be another one last year where we're dependent on other teams' decisions, and I think it will come down to a lot more. I think last day of the season will be a 3-horse race. I think one of us will be able to. I don't think it will be either of us. I think Leicester will be able to get out of that battle before the last game of the season, but it will be us 3 towards the end.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to run through it. City will be a loss, but I think I think if the plan works, it will be a 2-0, 1-0 loss that's been played very well. 13% possession, whatever it is.
Damage limitation for the goal difference, isn't it?
Exactly, just keeping that gap with, because I think it very, very likely could be us versus Forest on goal difference. Newcastle at home, I'm going to say a draw. If we play well at City, even if we lose, everyone's going to be behind Allardyce when we play Newcastle. So I'm going to say that's a draw.
Well, Newcastle have solidified their top 4 spot.
Oh yeah, so they're going to be on the beach as well.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to play for, and the points difference isn't enough
to make a difference.
Exactly, unless they win 4 in a row, which Newcastle are a good team, they're not that good. West Ham, it needs to be a win. It desperately needs to be a win. And then Spurs, I'm not going to lie, I think it'll be a win.
So he's going 7 points.
I think it'll be a win or a draw. I think 5 to 7 points, give or take.
So you've now got to make a decision. Do you stay in the Premier League or not? You have to pick one. There's no.
Yes, Big Sam's keeping us up. Yeah.
Joe, do Leeds stay in the Premier League or not?
No.
Ollie?
No, but only that's with my Everton head on, and that's me thinking
we're going down together.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think Leeds will go down and we will stay up.
If we go down, 6 times out of 10, the 49ers are buying us and we're going up within 3 seasons.
Right, okay.
I think we need a proper rebuild. I don't know if it will be with Sam Allardyce. I'd rather take someone like Carlos Corberán. You just got to hope he messes up at West Brom when he comes over. And then we go back to Bielsa ball and the cycle starts again. So I don't think it will be... Listen, it will be better than if Everton go down, that's all I'm saying. I don't think it will be that bad. Because our fans are used to it as well.
So yeah, that's it for the Leeds segment. After the break, we'll be talking to Joe and talking about Nottingham Forest's chances of staying in the division.
Welcome back to part 2 now. So we're going to move on to Nottingham Forest with Joe. So, Joe, we'll start. How are you feeling at the minute with 4 games to go?
Ooh, not confident. I think obviously we have Southampton next, which is a must-win, and I think if we don't win that, even a point, I think it's over. Because the rest of the fixture, we're so poor away from home. I don't think we'll pick up anything against Palace or Chelsea. Potentially Palace, because by that point, I mean, I think Palace are safe anyway, so they'll have nothing to play for. And I guess you could argue the same of Chelsea, but I mean, I think we have scored the least amount of goals away from home than any other team. And I think that, I mean, to be fair, I'd probably back us against Arsenal more than I would against either of those away fixtures. That's how bad it is.
The Forest way of just beating the bigger teams.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, we've done it before. We did it last season, the Cup against Arsenal, so who says we can't do it this time? But no, I think that I think we need a win against Southampton, and we need something against, I'd say another 3 points, maybe 3 draws, so 6 in total, and I think that'll be okay. But I don't think we'll get that.
Do you not? Right.
No.
So Southampton is the absolute must-win.
Oh,
That's
it's a must-win.
the biggest one.
I think
by a mile.
the advantage we've got over Leeds and Everton is I don't think either of you have a that sort of game.
There's not a gimme.
Exactly. So
think
that's the one advantage we do have.
The one for us is Bournemouth, but even them, they're a good side. They destroyed you.
Yeah, no,
I wouldn't want to play them.
The way they look at the minute, Bournemouth, I'd be worried for us. But yeah, going back to that Southampton game then, at home, is there the fear that you're kind of complacent about them because you know that that's your most important game and you look at it as there's your 3 points, but you've got to go and get them, haven't you?
You have to. I mean, the issue is because of the bottled Brentford the other week. The pressure's now on for this game, and I think the players don't. They have done, but I think throughout the majority of the season they haven't reacted well under pressure, and the amount of times we've gone a goal up. It happened against Leeds, went a goal up, we threw it away.
Was that game?
Yeah, and then Brentford as well. Obviously, we were 1-0 up for most of the second half, and we threw it away in the last couple of minutes.
That was a disaster.
It was an absolute disaster. Yeah.
The one I'm most surprised about is Navas.
I was going to speak about Navas actually. I really don't. I don't know what your lot's opinion on Navas is, but I'm really not on that Navas hype train at all.
Because I thought he had a huge game against Everton, and he was arguably your best player that day, apart from maybe Gibbs White and Brennan Johnson, who obviously scored twice. But
let's have it straight. Keylor Navas is a champion.
He's a top keeper.
Top
but
keeper.
I think that the reason he has that, the reason he is so decorated, people don't really. The issue I have with him, if you're a keeper and it's his handling, he'll save it and he'll push it back into play. And the amount of times we conceded against Brighton, we conceded against Brentford because of that, and it's constant. And
so he doesn't retain the ball.
His handling's awful.
Yeah, because he had world class centre backs coming to retrieve it as well.
Yeah,
whereas,
Joe Worrell is not a world class centre back. So
hate to break it to you.
Yeah, but and I think if you look at the key players who are going to really dig deep and keep us, it's not him. He doesn't care. He's come for a paycheck.
Right.
I'd much rather Dean Henderson in goal. I think Dean Henderson really did care, and I think Forest fans, we like, because of last season with Brice Samba, we like a character in goal, and he's not a character, and Dean Henderson was. Dean Henderson was taking his hat off to the crowd when he saved the penalty against Spurs. You don't have that with Navas.
That's really interesting that you say that, because for me, I was thinking Keylor Navas is one of the things that I'd be worried about, like with Forest, because he can pull off world-class saves, can't he? But like you say, if he can't do the basics correctly, then he's going to be a weakness for it. And if he's spilling the ball like he is, then it's gifting goals away. And I think with Nottingham Forest this season, you have been gifting goals away. You're so easy to score against. What do you think of that defence? And do you think that's going to be the main thing that's going to send you down if you do?
I think the defence is injury. I mean, we've had a ridiculous amount of injuries this year, particularly in the defence. So I think if we had the ideal, Cooper always wants to play a back five. If he had the ideal back five, then we'd be okay. But I mean, it is very makeshift. I mean, even players like Felipe, like you talked a minute ago about world class players. Felipe's used to playing in a world class defence, and he's very he is a good player, but he's very rash. He'll charge forward, and then he realises, oh, hang on, my cover is Joe Worrell, or Nico Williams. So it's not exactly I think the issue, although it's great having these world class players in, it's sort of not good for the players that have been the not world class players like your Joe Worrells. And so I think it is a leaky defence, and it's got worse. Obviously Nico Williams is now out for the season. I mean, we had to play Serge Aurier. Serge Aurier's been brilliant this season. He's been one of our best players, I think. But he had to play in, I think it was the right centre back against Brighton, and now obviously in right back. And I think if we have one more injury now, I don't think we have another centre half fit.
And this leads into the weird sort of. I mean, this comes from a lot of top six fans. People said, "How can Forest have so many injuries? How can they be going down when they've got 20 new players in?" But that's people who don't realise that from the Championship on the way up, you got rid of about the same amount of players as well.
No one understands that, and it's like I have to say it to people constantly. It's like we had to. I mean, five of the starting 11 we went up with were loan players.
Yeah.
We had to.
Your first game of the season, you only had three players that had started in the playoff final from last season.
Yeah, it was Ryan Yates, Joe Warren,
because you'd gotten rid of most of the squad.
Yeah. The personnel changeover is mad. It's a completely different team, and it's weird to feel. I can't feel attached to this team in the same way that I could in the Championship. I don't. It sounds weird. I don't like the team. I'm not a fan of the team. I don't like the players because there's no attachment. Some of them, the fans have Morgan Gibbs White have liked, but
it's like you've had this sentimental thing of going up with a team, and it's almost been ripped away from you because the players that you played with last season are not there anymore. I don't think. Is there anyone still there? I think is it Ryan Yates and Joe Worrell.
Joe Worrell and Johnson. I think that's pretty much it.
To have that ripped away from you, I feel like it loses a bit of a special touch of being in the Premier League. I think with Leeds,
we had a lot of them: Cooper, Ayling, Dallas. Calvin Phillips is a big one, especially considering.
And you've still got them. That's the thing. They're still there.
Phillips, but for years, Phillips was considered like a very lower level Championship midfielder, and then seemed to rise to the heights he did in lockdown.
I think
season was mad
because of the financial trouble we've been in the past. Before, sometimes we've had no choice but to play the likes of Ryan Yates and Joe Worrell. So they've got 50 to 100 appearances already in the Championship, and so I've seen them for a good portion of when I watch Forest, and now to see him playing in the Premier League,
you're proud of him.
Yeah, exactly. And we only have like one or two of those players now.
That's probably the key thing about you actually caring about your players, not having that unity of coming up to the Premier League and feeling like these are the players who got us there and these are the players who are going to keep us there. You've definitely not got that.
Is there a continuity of play style throughout that as well? Because that's why you keep them players, and that's why I think for Leeds, Cooper and Ayling have lasted for so long, because there's that continuity of thought throughout a play style.
I think the systems had to change so that although I think so Joe Worrell has been found out in the Premier League. I mean, I thought he was one of the best centre backs in the Championship, and he's gone up and he is awful. I think Ryan Yates has improved, but he's had an injury-ridden season, so he's barely been able to consistently play. But when he was playing consistently, he was really good. Obviously, Johnson stepped up, and he's been a key player. He's been brilliant when we needed. Obviously, the game against Everton and Leicester
he's
as well.
Such a threat. I think that's what. When I'm looking at the Forest team and how I compare it to Everton's, I see players who can grab the game by the scruff of the neck, and I think Brennan Johnson and Morgan Gibbs White are those. If you were to pick between those two, who's the key man that keeps Forest in the league?
Johnson.
You say Johnson, but then it swings in their form because recently Gibbs White's been really good, and Johnson's not scored in.
See, I've always rated Gibbs White. I thought he was fantastic when he was at Swansea under Cooper, as we know, and that's probably a main catalyst why Gibbs White ended up at Forest in the summer, because of Steve Cooper. But Brennan Johnson, when you watch Brennan Johnson, it's like
he's class, see him as the player that we need Brendan Arrington to be. Like a little, because he's skinny, he's a bit like that, but he's
quite lightweight, but has that agility to open it.
He's dense as well. He's dense, like he doesn't go down at the first man. He goes and he's crazy.
His finishing ability is unreal.
In front of goal, when you see him running through one-on-one, you back him every time, don't you? And that's having a player who can do that in pressure situations is absolutely huge. But then the risk is, if you do go down, he's a player that's surely guaranteed to go. So if you look
if you look at
the Forest
I don't blame
team
him as well.
Surely a few of them players are going to leave. So if you went down, what would happen?
I think some of the big names would go. I can't imagine. Like I said, I would not blame Johnson at all. If he deserves to go, he deserves to go somewhere better. I do think someone said, "You'll lose Johnson, you lose Gibbs White." I don't think we'll lose Gibbs White because he's on a big deal, and I think he'll stay within maybe for a season on the basis that we go up, and then obviously if we don't, he'll go. But I think because I think he does like. I know people have their opinions on him, but I think he does like the club, and I think he would want to see him. Because I don't think he'd go anywhere he wouldn't, unlike Johnson, who I could see going to a bigger club.
I think he probably warrant for the season he's had. I think he warrants if you go down a transfer to the Big Six club. Maybe Gibbs White less so because he's not been there that long. Brennan Johnson showed it at Forest for a lot longer than Gibbs White has. So I think Gibbs White needs to prove himself a little bit more to get that move. But I don't think in the future, if you didn't come up at the first time of asking, if you did go down, I don't think Gibbs White would stay for that much longer.
No. I also think Steve Cooper's job is actually safer if we go down.
Right.
Which sounds weird, but I think the way we've just got a new director of football as well. So, I think if we were to go down, I think because he's done it before, he's only managed to do it in so long. They keep him and try and get us back up. If we stay up, I think the owner will go right. Okay,
it's time for a change.
Time for a change. Like, you've done your job. You've kept Forest up, but we want to actually be competing. The whole thing is we don't want to be a team that's around the bottom every year. And I'm sure you feel this, and you all feel this.
It's tiring.
It is, yeah. It's not been an enjoyable season.
Especially
Stressful.
when you start the season well. Like, I remember starting the season thinking, I think we won 3 games out of 4.
You looked decent.
Like
I said
you
looked good.
We beat Chelsea 3-0. That was a top 10 performance. And then I remember ringing you and be like, yeah, we're going to do something. And then it just all disappears. It's a long season.
I think the World Cup break as well. I think that helped Nottingham Forest.
It did, yeah.
Because you had that reset and you were able to come back and have a little bit more form. Whereas I think Leeds, it ruined you.
Worse.
Yeah, it ruined you.
It's a very weird season with that because who normally has a 6-week break mid-season? So it's benefited some teams where they've made a managerial change, like Wolves and Aston Villa, but then other teams it's hindered them. And talking of managers, actually, you guys have put a lot of faith in Steve Cooper. So he's got 4 games left now. Other teams have changed. Leeds have rolled the dice and gambled.
Rolled the Allardyce.
Rolled the Allardyce, yeah. That was not a pun, by the way.
Well, you rolled the dice.
We rolled the dice, but Forest have stuck with their manager. So 4 games to go. Looking at them, what are you getting from each of them, and what final total will you finish on, and will he stay in the Premier League?
Okay, so I think 3 from Southampton. I'm going optimistic because it has to be 3. It has to be 3. And then it's Chelsea after that. They are poor. I'm gonna back us to get 1, and I would if we were better away from home. I'd say 3, but I think 1 because we are pretty poor. Arsenal at home, depending on the form they're on. Obviously, I know they won the other night, but if they're still dropping points to teams like Southampton, West Ham, like they were before, I would say we get a point against them.
The pressure's heaped on Arsenal at the minute. If they're still in the title race, then the pressure's at the biggest point they'll ever get. The running, we've already seen they've crumbled at some points in it, so there's nothing to say that you can't get a point there. And then Palace?
I'd say with Palace, if they're safe, which they probably will be, I'd say a point as well.
So what's your final total then?
We're on 30 now, aren't we? So I'm going to...
36.
36, I'm going to say
that's safe.
36.
So does that keep you in the Premier League?
Save's 35.
I think I said early on. I think safe is 35. It's a bit lower this season. So I think
you stay in the Premier League. If you're forced to answer now, will Nottingham Forest stay in the Premier League?
I wish you could ask me after Southampton because I'm gonna say yes on the basis of beat Southampton.
Okay, so let's ask the others as well. Some unbiased views. Cameron, will Nottingham Forest stay in the Premier League? Yes or no?
No.
Ollie?
I'm going to say Forest will go down purely for the fact that they've got Arsenal and Chelsea aren't going to go between now and the end of the season without getting a result. They're going to have to pick up 3 points somewhere, and I feel like Forest away from home, you've not got the best record, so I think that is where Chelsea will be able to capitalise.
It's the easiest fixture, I think, out of all of
them. Southampton, I do think you'll win. Chelsea, I think you'll lose. Arsenal, I think you'll lose, and I think you'll get a point against Palace, and that'll put you on 34. So I do think you'll go down.
Right.
So I think you'll go down as well. I'm thinking it's going to be Southampton, Leeds, and Forest at this point. I'm not convinced by your away form, which no one's away form's good in the relegation battle. No. But the only thing that will keep you in it is a big home win. You know, that's the Southampton game and the Arsenal game are the ones I'd be targeting because you guys at home, you have got that spirit as a club and you've got the fan base, which is something that we have as well. And Cameron would like to say Leeds have as well, but maybe not. But yeah, I personally think that you'll go down. But that wraps up part 2, which has been all about Nottingham Forest. And next, it's all about Everton.
Welcome back to the show. And now we're talking about Everton.
Yeah, we are. Our club, it's got to be done, hasn't it? We've been waiting for this moment, and There's a lot of drama at Everton. As always, there's a load going on. What a game we saw on Monday night against Leicester. That was drama at its finest, wasn't it?
Stressful is the word I'd use to describe it.
It really was.
End to end, the whole game. And I think the tempo was the most tempo we've seen actually all season in an Everton performance. And we actually played quite well, I thought. And that gave me a little bit of confidence going into these last 4 games that we can actually get out of it.
Yeah, we needed to win that one. It was a must-win game, but the performance just buoyed us a bit, gave us a bit of hope because it's an end-to-end game. Both teams needed to win, and I think we probably edged it, but their goalkeeper, Everson, had an incredible game.
It was similar to Keylor Navas's performances against Everton. I thought Everson had a fantastic game. He won't have a better game than that in his career, definitely not. And that's probably going to keep Leicester in the division. If we're talking about margins, that's the difference between going down and staying up. So yeah, I was a little bit disappointed that we didn't take our chances, and the late on chance for Decore and things like that. And yeah, it was one of those games where either side could have probably won it. That the tempo of the game probably meant that it was that end to end that either side could have nicked it.
Yeah. So last time we spoke about Everton, we didn't have this manager. We had Frank Lampard. So I want to know, Joe, what do you think of Sean Dyche? Because he's been in post for a few games now. There's plenty of time to assess what he's done. What do you think from the outside looking in?
I do. I like Dyche, but I don't think he's made that much of a. If you look at from where he came in to now, I don't think he's made that much. I don't really feel like he's, and this is just an outside, but I don't really feel like he's properly implemented his philosophy. The football looks the same, from what I think.
Right.
From what I can see. I mean, you might not agree, but I think that, the results haven't really changed.
There's definitely an argument there because I think in some games we've seen the blueprint, haven't we? Arsenal, for example, was absolutely that. But then in other games, for example, Fulham at home, that really did reflect a Frank Lampard team performance.
I think that Arsenal one was the new manager bounce. I think that was primarily that. I don't think
you don't want to write it off, but yeah, you can kind of see that was a game which is a bit of an anomaly, wasn't it? Cameron, what do you think of Sean Dyche?
I'm a big listener. I've said this before. I'm a massive fan of Sean Dyche, and I think weirdly, somehow you not really changing despite him coming in. If anything, is more of a. When we're looking back historically at what he did at Burnley, it should be almost like should be seen as an extra accomplishment because he's seen as like a 4-4-2 merchant. Someone like Sam Allardyce who can come in 2 weeks and change the whole system and get his point of view across within 2 games and everything sound like that. Do you know what I mean? Like that's his reputation, that he's a 4-4-2 basic football, like Allardyce's basic football. But just seeing the fact that it's taken so long for things to finally get across, I would say that shows how much deeper his play style is and how much deeper his understanding of the game is that it's taken a while for it to be completely understood.
With Dyche in now, it just gives me that bit more faith that we can stay in the Premier League because he's been there before. He remains extremely calm about the situation, which I think has hindered him in a few games. Me and Ollie have discussed quite a lot that he's quite hesitant to make substitutions, and I think that sometimes that could cost us because when you've got 4 games to go, you've got to turn some draws into wins. So at what point do you gamble and go, this draw needs to be turned into a win? We can't just accept draws anymore.
The same thing's happening at Leeds as well. I mean, I remember it was I can't remember what game it was actually, but it's happened multiple points where we've got Nonto on the bench and he's raring to come on. And realistically, he should be getting minimum 40 minutes of the game, and he's just getting left on the bench. So I think maybe that's an omnipresent. Well, maybe you could give like a Forest perspective. Is Steve Cooper using subs effectively?
I think his subs are the worst part of this game.
Yeah, well, see, maybe that's an omnipresent theme throughout the relegation.
I was going to say, it's quite, for all of us, we all have a manager that is kind of reluctant to make substitutions and maybe doesn't make substitutions at the right time. And we even had it under Lampard.
Is it the common theme, perhaps, though, that teams down there don't want to risk what they already have at that point? So if you're in a game and you've got a point, maybe it makes sense that the teams lower down in the Premier League are more likely to make less changes because you don't want to bring that player on, take that gamble, and it backfire. And I think you do need bravery in a relegation battle, don't you? And I think we've got that from the players. And I hope that Dyche's trust in the players gives them the belief. But in the Leicester game, for example, I feel like that was there for the taking to bring Damari Gray on and get the winner. But who knows? We could have got beat, couldn't we, Ollie?
I think the point, you have to kind of take the point and move on with it. But yeah, I definitely agree that there was actually room to get all 3 points there. And if we'd have been a little bit braver and maybe brought Damari Gray on, maybe brought Onana on to sit a little bit deeper and just control that midfield battle against Maddison and Tielemans, I think possibly there would have been 3 points there on offer. But
if you're going to go down in style.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what
I
annoys
agree,
me.
yeah.
Like, if you go, like, realistically, I think the likelihood of Everton going down statistically is about 70%. We're on
It's a lot
30%.
more.
Forest are on
Yeah.
50%. Likelihood is you're going down. That's the objective reality. You've got a really poor run in of Brighton where you're going to lose. Sorry, City you're going to lose. Well, maybe you'll get a point. I'm not sure. Wolves maybe a draw, and Bournemouth probably a win. That won't be enough points to keep it. If you're at this point where you're Sean Dyche,
You've got to go on, I think.
You've got to put everything you can. Use all 5 subs throughout the game.
That's where we fail, actually,
Yeah.
because we against Brentford, like you were saying a minute ago about how, you know, when you're at the bottom, you want to take the risk, and so what we do is we try and ride out the 1-1 or the 1-0 maybe, and then we fall apart in the last 5-10 minutes. I think it is worth it. Like you said, if you
what
brought
would
on
you
Damari
rather
Gray-
regret? Parking the bus after 60 minutes
Especially
to
when
try
you're in
and
this
scrape a
situation as
0-0,
well.
or conceding and losing 1 point. Statistically,
Yeah.
it's losing 1 point versus gaining 2.
Well, that's
Yeah,
the decision
yeah.
you've got to make,
I
isn't
think-
it? And if you want to keep your points ticking over, you sometimes need to get them draws. Like, draws are valuable earlier in the season, but with 4 games to go, you need wins.
I think earlier in the season, I definitely lived by the thing where if you can't win, don't lose and just take the point. But now it's crunch time. It's at that breaking point where if you can't get 3 points, it's going to be detrimental whether you stay up or go down. So I think in these 4 games, Dyche is going to have to take a risk somewhere. I think he should have probably taken a risk on Damari Gray on Monday night, but definitely in these next 4 games, there's going to have to be a risk taken somewhere.
Well, this away win needs to come soon, and we've had 2 opportunities now where we nearly got it. Nottingham Forest away, we were leading and we threw that away. That was a huge chance to win an away game. Leicester is exactly the same, and we need to win away from home if we want to stay in the league. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, and Brighton and Wolves aren't the easiest places to go and get a result. Wolves will probably be on the beach by then, but they look rejuvenated under Lopetegui. Brighton are flying, as we know. They actually beat Wolves 6-0, didn't they, the other day? So that's going to be a tough game. But if there's ever a place where we can get 3 points on the road, I do feel like it's Brighton, because we have a relatively decent record there. So
beatable team.
They
We
are
beat
beaten.
them. Yeah,
So it's one of them where, as we said before, a risk is going to have to be taken at some point. I think to stay in the league, and that goes for all 3 teams, Leeds, Forest and Everton, a big performance is needed somewhere. We're going to have to pick up 3 points where we're not expected to.
Yeah.
So
Brighton's one of them where you
Brighton.
look, will they miss more, they'll miss more chances than Manchester City will. So you've got to hope. We've got to hope for luck in every game we've got left now. All of us, all teams need to hope for luck at this point, because it's crunch time, and it's a point where you know that on paper we aren't as good as the teams that we're playing against, but you need that bit of luck. And I think with Brighton, we're going to have to ride a few waves. They're going to have a lot of chances, but we're going to need to nick one and just dig in, aren't we? And that's one that I'm not writing off just yet. City can't be written off either, because you're at home. That's the thing. If you look at City, what do you think of that one? Because you've got a bit of hope for that.
I do have a bit of hope for that, and just because it's Everton and it's the most Everton thing to do to try and just turn up at home and get a result against Manchester City. I'm not saying we're going to sit here and say we're going to win.
And the fans are what is going to win you that game.
I think for all 3 of us, the fans are going to be huge in this
Instrumental,
run-in.
yeah.
Because
especially Everton.
I think, especially Everton, because we're very pessimistic if it goes against us. Reactive is a good
That's
word.
the biggest thing, I think. I know that you guys support your team through thick and thin, but for me, that reactive way that Goodison is, when something goes against us, you feel it, and it's almost
it's the whole and then the entire ground.
It's an uncontrollable impact that it has on the players. So when we're negative and when we aren't happy with the team, it rubs off on the players. But when we're behind them, they feel like they're like $1 million.
I would say, listen, it definitely is applicable at Everton, but we had Sam Allardyce the other day say that he can feel a lack of confidence in the players, and he put it down to the way that the fans have been acting as well. So obviously, I know that he's president at Everton, but I think that would apply to be honest, I think a lot of the way that the stadiums are set up. West Ham, you can be booing the entire time, and they're not going to hear you.
Yeah.
They're not bothered. But
Whereas Goodison's on top.
With Goodison, you're literally on top of each other, and Ellen Road is. You've got that entire South Stand just screaming at you the entire game. And I'm not sure how it is at the City Ground, but that is quite a...
It's still the South. We have one of the sides is just one tier, and it's like
it's a top heavy.
Very top heavy. So you can hear.
Like you're on top.
And when you're near A block, you have the away fans on one side, and you have A block on the other side. You can hear everything, especially when you're around that area taking corners and stuff. You can really hear it.
So if we look at the Everton team, let's talk about some individual players. So one player that is going to be absolutely crucial for Everton is Dominic Calvert-Lewin, whose fitness this season has really impacted us. Him staying fit is paramount to whether we stay up, I think. And in the 3 games that he's now played for us, I think we've been able to see what he offers us and how much better a team we are when we have him.
He's looked better every single time he stepped foot on the pitch in his last 3 games, and that amounted to a goal at Leicester, which he massively needed for his confidence, because if he doesn't get that goal, if he misses the penalty, I think that's him for the rest of the season without scoring a goal. So he just needs to get that goal tally ticking over, and if he can manage to find a little bit of form in these 4 games, who knows what's going to happen, because Manchester City, okay, tough game. If you can rough them up a bit and get at them, which Dominic Calvert-Lewin likes to do, he likes to put himself about and be that big presence up front, there's every chance there. He's got quite a good record at the Amex, scoring in his last 2 games there. The problem is his fitness, and we always worry about his fitness, don't we? And if he can just keep that fitness up to a point where we can use him for the rest of the season, I think it's going to be huge for us. And you do worry if he does get injured again, the heads will drop in the whole squad, because I think players like Alex Iwobi and Amadou Onana have been quite vocal of how they're saying that they want to see Dominic Calvert-Lewin back in the team. So if he were to get injured again, I think all heads would drop in the team and you'd be confined to relegation at that point.
It's crazy that we are going to have to rely on a player who hasn't played that much football this season. I think he'll feel the pressure himself, that he knows that if he gets injured, the confidence is drained from the squad, from the fans, everybody. And other than him, the other man who can keep you in the Premier League is Jordan Pickford, because he can dig you out of a game where you're playing awfully and he can keep you in it. He showed that multiple times this season. He's one of the main reasons why we stayed up last season. But for me, Jordan Pickford can do absolutely everything. But what we don't have this season, which we've had previously, is that talisman who can take the game on his own shoulders. Richarlison, that's who did it for us last year. We don't have that anymore, so we're banking on getting through games with the odd goal, aren't we? We can't no longer have a guy who's going to take the game by the scruff of the neck and just carry it.
But how dare Pickford write something on his bottle? You see all people kicking off over that. How dare... I mean, penalties are hard enough for a keeper to have a go at someone. But I'm just looking at the ratings now, and everyone is between they're like 5, 6s. Some of them, Decore's on a 3, but there's one that's standing out to me. Alex Iwobi got a 9.1.
I mean, I didn't think Alex Iwobi played that well on Monday night. Despite getting his goal, and it was a very well taken goal, didn't think he offered that much, but he is playing out of position. We can't forget this. He's playing on the right wing, where realistically he's a midfielder. He's a central midfielder, box to box, that'll push on and maybe play as a 10 from time to time, but he's not a winger. So for Dyche to put him out there, and he's not really having an output on games as much as we would want him to as fans.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent in that squad. We talk about these players. There's players who you, in mid-season, you'd have gone, oh yeah, Everton aren't going to be down there. How many clubs fans have we spoke to where they've gone, yeah, Everton will be fine, Everton will be fine. But it's got to it now. With 4 games to go, we're right in it. And for Everton, a club that's never been relegated from the Premier League, the joint longest-serving club in English football in the top flight, what would be the impact if Everton went down, Ollie?
Detrimental. Financial, detrimental on the fans. You kind of don't want to think about it, do you? Because you do worry about if we'll be the next Sunderland or Portsmouth, for example. You do worry that could actually happen. So the impact, I don't think is positive. I've heard some fans saying, oh, it's all right, we'll go down, we'll have a rebuild and we'll come back up next season. I don't think that's possible. I think the way we're set up at the moment, the way the players are, I think a lot of players would leave. I think the majority of our squad would not be the same next season. We'd have, a bit like Burnley were last year, they only had 2 players as part of their squad to come back up. So I think we would need a rebuild, but obviously the financial situation at Everton doesn't really accommodate for that. So yeah, the impact can only be a negative one in my opinion.
It's just terrible timing with the new stadium as well. Like, it's the worst possible time for you to go down probably in the last 20 years.
Well, the new stadium being built is obviously a big thing as well, and obviously that's on the horizon, which is great, but you do fear for the funding of that, and especially the squad as well. You've not got any relegation clauses on them players, so teams that are built to go down and come back up can do it quite seamlessly. We've seen that with Fulham and Norwich, but Everton aren't built to go down, because Everton are a huge football club who should never be going down. But Joe, what do you think of Everton's prospects if you went into the Championship? Because you've seen the Championship and you know what it's like. How
He's
would
a
we
veteran.
Championship expert. Financially, I'm not sure. But like you interested you made the point about Portsmouth and Sunderland. I really do think that could happen. You could do a Sunderland, and obviously you don't want that to happen, but I think that is very possible. It's a volatile league as well. It's not. I think the misconception is for a lot of teams, you go down and come straight back up. But it's not. It's not always like. I know Burnley have done that, but and teams have done it in the past, but it's not really like that. It's lost its fall. I think as well, maybe even more so. It's lost its like fallen giants, if you like, because obviously Villa, Leeds, and Forest have all gone up.
Yeah.
There's no one really in the Championship now.
Yeah.
That it is just the likes of Millwall. And yeah, literally.
That's the worry, though, for us, and I think you might be able to empathise with us a bit here. If we got relegated, we would be everyone's cup final every week, and Nottingham Forest are a huge football club. Did you feel that at all when you guys were down there, that this is Nottingham Forest, we want to go and beat them because they're Nottingham Forest?
When I was, funny enough, you say, like, when I was younger, it felt like that, but I think as time went on,
kind of just became a mainstay. In the
league,
and
it's sort of, but then we sort of over the last few years we've been sort of revitalising. Season ticket prices went down, and we were selling out every. We were getting 28,000 every week.
Right, okay.
And then those 2 or 3 seasons before we had the season where we went up were really. We had one season where we almost went down, and the fans really got behind them. And then from then it was just gradual improvements. And then obviously we had the season under Sabri where we bottled the playoffs, but then we still carried on after that. And I think on that season where we did go up, it was like that.
So of course we don't want to even consider that that's going to happen. There is, of course, there's a huge chance. As you say, the probability is looking like it could be us at the minute, but probability doesn't tell you everything, that's for sure. And looking at these final 4 games now, we're going to go through them and we're going to see where we're going to get points. So, Ollie, I'll start with you. What games are we getting points from, and what's our final total going to be?
I don't want it to get to the last 2 games of the season and us needing 2 wins, because you do worry that what that would do to the squad's mentality, and it would just, I think, would be a disaster. So I think we have to get 1, maybe 3 points out of Brighton or City. So I think I'm going to be positive, like, as you have to be. There's no point being pessimistic if you're predicting games. I'm going to say we'll beat Brighton, lose to City, beat Wolves, draw to Bournemouth.
Okay, so
that's
a total of
I think that's
7
interchangeable with Bournemouth. I think you could beat Bournemouth and then lose to Wolves. So I'm going to stick with beat Brighton, lose to City, draw against Wolves, beat Bournemouth.
Okay, I'm going to go with a win at Brighton as well. I do feel it. I do sense that. I think at Manchester City we'll put in a really valiant performance, as most teams do against Manchester City. You do try, don't you? And even however well you play in the end, it can always go wrong. And then the key one for me, Wolves is the one I'm looking at as the one to win, because we've seen them get absolutely annihilated by Brighton, and I think it's coming to a point in their season where it doesn't matter anymore. And the big thing for us is, what teams are you going to get? So with Bournemouth and Wolves, are you going to get the on the beach, we're done now, it's fine, or are you going to get the no pressure, we'll just play really well because there is no pressure on them? So that's huge for us. I think we'll beat Brighton, I think we'll lose to Manchester City, and I think we'll draw with Wolves and beat Bournemouth on the final day, and it's going to go to the wire for me. And I think a total of that will be 7 more points, which will put us on 36, which we've said as an agreement so far. Yeah. We think 36 will keep you up. What was your points tally overall?
So it was beat Brighton, lose to City, draw to Wolves, beat Bournemouth. So
36.
That's 36, yeah.
Interesting. So we're all
we can't all stay up.
Yeah, you got to back yourself in it.
But it's
like Love
interesting.
Island, you got to back yourself.
There might be a team that stays up on 35 points, which would be just incredible.
I think there might be. I think there might
Listen,
be.
we're not going to... From what we've said, none of us are going to win as many games as you think we will.
No, I think all of us could end up finishing on 33 points, and it could go down to goal difference. That's how mad it is.
If we lose all of our remaining games, all of us, which is a possibility,
we go down.
Yeah, and Sam Allardyce gets paid £3 million for doing nothing. People say that so it's 500 grand base and then 2.5 if we stay up. So he could score 0 goals and get 3 million.
I wouldn't be surprised if Allardyce scored a goal for Leeds. I thought he was your manager.
No, shut up. You know what I mean.
Okay, so
every time with this guy.
Final thoughts then. I want a sentence from each of you about your own club. So you tell me, literally describe your entire relegation battle in 1 sentence, and then tell me the 3 teams that will go down. Cameron, I'll start with you. 1 sentence, and then your 3 teams that go down.
Big Sam, pints and a kebab. I'm going to say Southampton, Everton, Leicester.
Joe.
Fans to get behind Steve Cooper and the players, and I think I'm going to say Southampton, Leicester, Everton. And I want in that order, say Everton, Leicester, Southampton.
Ollie.
Right. Banking on the fitness of Dominic Calvert-Lewin and the dropping of Michael Keane for Yerry Mina, which needs to happen. And I'm going to go Southampton, Forest, Leeds.
Very interesting. I'm going to go with Southampton bottom. I'm going to have Leeds 19th because they leak goals just incredibly. And
Forest 18th.
It's going to have to be Forest 18th, yeah. So we've all got very different opinions there, and that's the joys, isn't it? We're all in for a very, very difficult few weeks. I'm certainly stressed. I'm sure all you guys are stressed as well, but that's relegation battle, isn't it?
I'm not stressed because you know what? I always like to embody the sort of style of the manager that comes in. So when it was Bielsa, you were right. I was looking at stats. When it was Marsh, I was looking at a lot of MLS games.
To embody the manager.
And now Allardyce has come in. I've been on the lash for the last 3 days, so it doesn't really mean out to me.
But it's good to know that you have faith because we've all got faith in our team because we have to. What's the point in supporting your team if you don't have that faith? You've got to, haven't you? But honestly, guys, it's been fantastic. Cameron, it's been great having you on.
Cheers, mate. I'm going to go to the pub after this.
Joe as well. It's been brilliant.
Thank you very much. It was good. And
that is all for a game of two halves this week, the relegation special. I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. I'm nervous but hopeful. But, that's football for you, isn't it? So that's all for today. We'll see you in a bit.